Okay, now we are recording. All right, so in this session, we'll have a theoretical overview, so a little bit of the theory behind vocabulary teaching and learning. We'll discuss the needs and challenges of teaching vocabulary. We'll look at some solutions for teaching, solutions for practice. We'll also take a brief look at assessment practices and some additional resources. All right, so I have a warm-up question for you. Curious, oops, no, I just have one warm-up question for you. How you feel about vocabulary teaching, and we'll start out with this poll here. So how do you feel about teaching vocabulary? You can answer here in the poll. If you love it, it's okay, or you think it's the worst. Interesting. Almost 70% of you have responded to the poll. I'll leave it open for about 10 more seconds. If you haven't responded, feel free to jump in there. 5 of you have not done the poll. I don't know which 5 of you. Oh, I've got 85% of you have done it. Well done. All right, so let me share the results with you. So it's interesting. A lot of you do love it, almost a little over a third of you. Most of you are, I guess half of you are just it's all right. It's not terrible, but I don't love it. And there are a few of you who really don't like teaching vocabulary, and I can understand why. I have mixed feelings about teaching vocabulary. I love doing vocabulary practice. I don't like actually teaching it personally. All right, so let's move on. So now that I know how you feel about it, I am curious to know what kind of strategies or activities you use when you're teaching vocabulary. You can answer in the chat, or you can raise your hand to speak. If there's any specific strategies you use or activities you like to use when you are doing vocabulary. I'd love to know how teachers in Kenya tackle vocabulary. Maybe you have a certain system or routine for teaching vocab. Go ahead, Molly.
Thank you. Now, how are you, Mina?
I'm great, thank you.
Okay, so I just want to respond to the question that you have said on how to teach vocabularies in Kenya. You know, the first thing is we always, okay, in my own perspective, and I think it might also work with others, we always think that vocabularies are new words or difficult words. I don't know if that's the case. Then, if that's the case, in my own honest opinion, I don't think if any teacher will come one day and say, today we are going to learn about vocabulary. But maybe what we usually do is, for example, when we are reading set books or any other passage or whatever, writings that have vocabularies, and when we meet a new word, we tend to explain that word, and that word might be actually a vocabulary. That's my opinion.
Ah, that's really interesting and helpful. So you don't really have vocabulary classes or vocabulary lessons. As vocabulary comes up, you deal with it as it comes up through other things.
Exactly.
Okay, and so in that case, you probably don't have certain strategies or activities because it's not a regular part of it. Okay.
Not really. Not really.
Very good. So in the chat, I see that there are some varied responses. Irene does matching pictures with words. Leonard teaches vocabulary and context, so maybe similar to what you're saying, Amali, as it comes up. Nancy says, for me, the learner identifies the vocabulary from the passage, then I give the meaning, or they find the meaning from the dictionary, and then let the learners construct meaningful sentences using them. Okay, so similar to what you're saying, as it comes up, then they deal with it. Anne says, using a scenario, say hotel industry, then having a role play tailored toward the relevant vocabulary. For practice. It's usually fun and informative, educational at the same time. That is a great practice activity. Christine says, I teach vocabulary during passage reading. So I think similar to what you're saying. Using visuals, that's very helpful. Benedict says, I find teaching vocabulary interesting, mainly through teaching in context. That's a great way to do it. And Patricia says, using games or pictures and games. Excellent. And I see we have 2 hands up. Seth, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mina. On teaching vocabulary, actually, it depends. In most cases, at the onset, if you're teaching students vocabulary, for instance, you want to teach new words, you can have maybe contextual analysis. There is a specific word. You want the learners to know what it means. So you put it in context. So from the context, the learner can be able to guess the meaning of the word based on the context. Similarly, if you are teaching new words, you can make sentences. From the sentence, you pick a specific word you want to teach the learners. So before you explain what it means, maybe you get to know from the learner's perspective. Then you talked about in your introduction, I saw that going beyond the level of what? That is the cramming. But now from the onset, actually, if the learners have to get to learn the vocabulary, because these are words that are kind of arbitrary to them. There is no correlation between the mother tongue and the English words based on spelling and sometimes pronunciation. So it becomes tricky. That is why in most cases, if you analyze the words contextually, it will help the learners to know them. At some point, you come up with what we call the word card, or sometimes we call them flashcards or whatever it is. So that these words, as the learners get to learn them, then they will be able to memorize. Actually, memorization, you are learning new words is one way of the learners getting to know the vocabularies. So with the time, they will be using them. And now you encourage that these new words you learn, you have to use them so that now they become part of you. That is the easiest approach, or the basic approach we use when teaching vocabulary. But in most cases, the vocabularies are normally intertwined together in the comprehension, so that as the learners read through during the reading lesson, there are specific words they come across, and sometimes in comprehension they are written in bold, so they will be singled out. And in the process of reading, they can get the context of the word, or the teacher can further give an explanation based on the word. So there are 2 levels where you can basically learn the vocabulary from the onset. At some level during reading process, that is during comprehension, the learners can as well learn the vocabulary simply by the teacher maybe singling out specific words that have got a specific meaning. That is a basic approach, Mina.
Thank you for that explanation. I like the emphasis you and a lot of other people in the chat are putting on context, because if we're introducing and learning vocab in context, then it's, I think, one of the first steps to going beyond memorization. So that's really important. Great. And Caroline, you have your hand up as well.
Hi, Mina.
Hi.
Yes, now I wanted to add on something. When we're in school, I remember we used to be prompted to use dictionaries. Well, if you come across a word that is complicated or you don't understand, use the dictionary to teach it helps to teach the word meaning. And it also, it helps during the participation, it makes it easier. So I wanted to put that across for the dictionary part.
I like that too, because it makes the learners in control of gaining their own knowledge instead of the teacher just saying, oh, that means blah, 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 blah. No, get your dictionary out, look it up, find out what it means. And so makes students responsible. That's great. Excellent. All right, so in terms of theory, so Paul Nation is one of the leading experts in English language teaching in terms of vocabulary. A vocabulary tree, excellent. Something I noticed between these different answers too is, and I think this goes back to what Imali said in the very beginning. Imali was saying, if you mean by teaching vocabulary, talking about really complicated hard words, then that's one thing. But then also teaching vocabulary is teaching vocab to beginners as well, where they have to learn, like, this is an apple, this is a banana, which is a different kind of more concrete teaching of vocabulary than some of that higher level abstract vocabulary. And so, yeah, I think, Margot, this is great for beginner learners, but it's something that we could do with higher level learners as well. So Paul Nation is one of the leading experts for English language teaching and vocabulary. And so a lot of times his work is cited. One of his quotes is, the best way to make sure a learner forgets a word is for the teacher to present a short, clear explanation of the meaning and then pass on to the next piece of work. It sounds nice, a short, clear explanation of a word. Oh, okay, I understand. But students will immediately forget. So something like what Caroline said, making students look it up in the dictionary themselves will automatically make them remember better because they're doing the work themselves. They have that tactile, manual, kinesthetic activity to go with it. They'll also be getting a visual of the word. Synonyms and antonyms are very helpful, Adelia. It helps them to make connections to other words, which is very important. So to elaborate on this quote, studies have found that rote memorization, basically just memorizing by heart, does not lead to long-term retention. Often, you probably did this when you were kids too. I did this as well. You have a lot of vocabulary, you memorize it, you take a test or quiz, and then a week later, if somebody asks you about that vocabulary, it is completely gone. The word selection should be done thoughtfully and presented thematically. So a lot of you are already doing this thoughtfully by letting students pick out the words that they need, as opposed to you assigning them. There are types of classes, especially if you're working with beginners, where you come in and you have a set of vocabulary you'd like to teach, but they should have some connection to each other, like a theme. For example, things we find around the classroom. Fruits we eat, sports we play with a ball, something like that. So something thematic. And then something that's important for making sure that we retain this vocabulary is opportunities for practice in all 4 skills. This is what creates lasting vocabulary knowledge. Instead of just seeing a definition, oh, okay, I got it, or hearing a definition, we need to do more with it. Something else that has been shown to be very helpful in studies is strategies that analyze words based on affixes, parts of speech, word families, or as Adelia said, connecting synonyms and antonyms, ways for students to attach some kind of structure to the words, be a bit analytical. Very importantly, they need to make meaningful connections to the vocabulary. Just giving a definition and then hearing a random sentence does not make a meaningful connection. Students need to think about this word and how it applies to their own lives or their own selves. In teaching vocabulary, I think many of us, we ask students to make sentences with words. So for example, if the vocabulary word was frustrated, and then I would look at a student's sentence they wrote, and they wrote, "The man was very frustrated." Okay, well, that is a correct sentence, but it has no meaning. For one thing, the man was very frustrated. Does that mean he's happy? Does that mean he's hungry? What does that mean? And also, who is the man? It would be much better to have a meaningful sentence, such as, "My mother gets very frustrated when I don't listen to her." That's a meaningful sentence. You can probably imagine your mother being frustrated. You can even get more specific with that. Those are the kinds of connections that create lasting memories. And we can't just have the vocabulary and then forget it. We need to come back to it over time and recycle it, which can be tricky because we're busy. This is another quote from Paul Nation. He says that most vocabulary learning will happen when the learners use the vocabulary for other purposes. So basically what he's saying here is that your students, probably their best learning for vocabulary doesn't happen in your classroom. It happens if they're doing something else, like reading or watching a movie or listening to music or talking to someone, and they either come across the vocabulary or they find a use for it. That's when it's really going to matter. And so we need to help students make those connections through our activities. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey. I saw your hand shoot up.
No, sorry, Mina, it was by mistake. Sorry.
No problem. All right, so there's a lot to know about vocabulary words. So when we're thinking about this, we also need to think about what our learning objectives are. So when we're talking about students needing to know vocabulary, do they just need it so they can take a multiple choice test? If that's the only reason they need vocabulary, well, then we don't have a very difficult job to do, quite honestly. But most likely your students don't need vocabulary just for multiple choice tests. There's a whole range of other things that they might need this vocabulary for. Are they going to be using this vocabulary later in life? Are they going to be using English in their lives? If they're going to be using English in their lives to go to university, to work, or anything else, then they're going to need vocabulary on a much higher level than the kind of learning you need for a multiple choice test. So we need to consider 2 things here. Our knowledge of vocabulary in a receptive way, meaning if we hear the vocabulary or we read it, do we understand what it means? That's one level of understanding vocabulary, which is important, but is different than having a productive knowledge of vocabulary. So maybe if you come across the word, you know what it means, but if you need to speak or write, oh, what was that word? I can't remember the word that I need. That's a whole other thing. I think generally receptive is easier. Speaking for myself, I've studied many languages. I'm not good at any of them. Currently, I am studying, sort of studying Swahili on Duolingo, the app. And when they have the word in Swahili and I just need to, they have different words I can choose to translate it, I can always do that kind of receptive vocab. But when they give me the word and I need to, or they give it in English and then I need to write it in Swahili. I do terribly at it because productive is a lot more difficult for me, and I think for most people. So either way, we need to know many things about words. We need to know either how it's spelled or pronounced for our receptive skills, if we're going to read it or hear it. We need to know the meaning of it. If we're using it in a productive way, we need to know the part of speech. It is very useful to know the synonyms and antonyms. If we're going to use it, we also need to know the collocations. We need to know, for example, even something basic like shower, that we don't get a shower, we take or have a shower. So those collocations are very important. May be useful, especially for higher level learners, to know if the word that they're talking about has other meanings as well. We also want to know the related parts of speech. So for example, if we're studying the word transport, we might also want to know transportation, transportational, transporting, those related parts. Examples, how the word is actually used is very helpful. And then also if we think about the context or register, some words are very casual and some words are very formal, and they sound odd or strange when they're used in the wrong place. Good question, Margot. A collocation is a set of words that go together, and then we find them often coming together. So we might find a collocation, for example, world domination. We often see those words coming together, or even just general collocations. For example, we do homework. In Uzbekistan, the teachers would always say, oh, I wrote my homework. But that's actually not the collocation we use in English. We do homework. Or the example I gave where we take or we have a shower, we don't do a shower, something like that. So collocations are words that often come together. And sometimes if we just translate from our language may have a different collocation. And so it may sound strange in the other language. I hope that answers your question. So this is a lot of information for learners to know. How are we going to find the time to, let's say we have, even if we're working with beginners, we don't have time to explain all that. Or maybe we read a text and our learners picked out 10 or 15 words that they don't understand and they want more explanation. They want to know more about. Well, how are we going to find the time to explain all those things about all those vocabulary? Well, you've already heard one solution from Oven, and actually that would be flipped classroom. And I'm going to make this even simpler than flipped classroom. It technically is flipped classroom, but basically you're assigning the definition part as homework. So if you have, let's say 10 or 15 words that students really are struggling with, but you realize they really do need to know this vocabulary, well, at home, what they should do is they should look up the definition, they should write it down, they should find some examples, some synonyms or antonyms, maybe some collocations, what kind of context, and they should bring that work back into the classroom. That way you can do some activities and discussion, see which ones need more attention, and then you can do something communicative and higher level with it. The other issue is that I found this in vocabulary classes, while trying to make sure that students get all that information, it turns into a very teacher-centered class where I am just talking and talking and talking and talking. This word means this, it's a verb. It means blah, 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 blah. An example is, and I'm just talking and talking. So a way that we could change this is to let the students do the teaching. So we might assign each student in the class one or a couple of words. And when they come into class the next day, they will teach the words. We could also do this in groups. So maybe we've split it up. Maybe we have 10 vocabulary words. And so each student has been assigned 2 words. They get into groups of 5, and each student explains their words to the rest of the group. And so this way we can make sure students are more active. They're getting all of the information. They have some responsibility themselves. And they're more likely to explain it to each other in a way that they understand. So while students are learning vocabulary, they can't just sit there passively either. whether they're looking in a dictionary or the teacher's explaining the word or they're figuring it out from context. They need to be recording the vocabulary in some way. Flashcards were mentioned earlier. These are very helpful, especially I would say with concrete kinds of words, words that can easily be translated. We also have vocabulary logs. Oftentimes teachers keep, or students keep a notebook where they write down their new words and information about it. We can also use a graphic organizer as a vocab log. So we see here we have the word, the part of speech. They have to write the meaning. They can write an example that they found from someone else, but they also have to create their own example here. And there's an area for notes as well. So if there's something special about this word that students should know, they have a place to put that. This can even be done with beginner levels. If we look online, there's a lot of worksheets that are basically graphic organizers, a way for young learners to do their vocabulary in a more interesting way than just writing it down in their notebooks. And then something I really like is vocab squares. So vocab square would, you could, if you wanted, you could use an entire sheet of A4 paper. Do I have any A4 paper here? You could use an entire sheet of A4 paper, or you could just have a half a sheet, and then they're going to divide their piece of paper into 4 squares. In the top left corner, they'll write their word and the part of speech. In the next box, they put the definition. They put their own example. And because many learners are visual learners, they put an image. The image doesn't have to be for the word itself. For example, I don't know, if we had the word perspective, I can't draw a picture of perspective, but maybe I can find an image or draw a picture that helps me remember the word perspective. So maybe it's a picture of a person on a mountain looking down at a house and it looks very tiny. So we are going to try this. We're going to get into breakout rooms in a moment and make some vocab squares. So again, this is what the vocab square looks like. It has 4 parts: the word and part of speech, the definition, your own example, and an image. And the image doesn't have to be of the thing, but it should help you remember the word. So for example, this word is akimbo. It is an adjective. It means to have the hands on the hips and the elbows turned outward. And here's an example. I knew I was late because my mom was waiting outside with her arms akimbo. And that was easy to have an image of because this is what akimbo looks like. Ah, good example, Seth. Fast foods is definitely a collocation. Excellent. All right, so if you look in WhatsApp, you will see the groups. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment just so that I can, actually, I don't think I need to stop sharing. I think I can just copy this into the chat. Okay. You can either look in WhatsApp or you can look in the chat, and you will see that each room has been assigned a vocabulary word. I chose very hard vocabulary words that 4 of them I didn't know the meaning. Actually, 3 of them I never heard before. 1 of them I just learned 2 weeks ago. And the other one I heard many times, but I never knew what it meant until about a year ago. So this is very high level, maybe even obscure vocabulary. I chose them because I didn't want to choose any words that you already know. So in your breakout room, you're going to use whatever word goes with your breakout room. We'll just have 5 breakout rooms. And if you are able to, you can make this like using Word or whatever screen apps you have. If you can't, or you can, if one person just wants to write everything on a piece of paper for everyone else to see, you can do that. I've made sure that you can all share your screens. So when you're in the breakout room, you can share your screen with others. If you can't do it visually, that's fine. You can just be prepared to share the answers with us. And if you have an image and you can't share it, just send it to me and then I'll share it. When we come back, each room is going to present their word. So you also might want to choose 1 or 2 people who will be responsible for explaining the vocabulary when we come back. Are there any questions about what you will do in your breakout rooms?
Yes, Mina.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So we will basically explain the meaning of the word, give example, and construct a sentence if possible.
Yes. And if you can find an image or draw an image or tell me at least in your head, what do you see when you think of this word? Then that would be this bottom corner here. If you need
Okay.
any help, call me to the room. I'm gonna have it for 5 minutes, but then I'll check in the rooms to see if you guys need more time. Because the first thing you have to do is find out what these words mean. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead.
Mina,
Yeah, go ahead.
is it possible to display the words again?
Yes,
I
they're
didn't get that.
in the chat. Do you see them in the chat?
Let me check.
Okay. Oh, oh, I forgot, on phones you can find them in the chat and you can find them in WhatsApp. And actually, you know
Okay,
what?
yes, thank you.
I can put them here as well. Here, give me 1 second. I can add them right to this slide. I don't know why I didn't do that. Okay, so now you see on this slide that you'll be able to see in your breakout rooms, you see which rooms have which words, you see the template and everything you need there. Okay, now I will open the rooms. All right, I think we've got everyone back. And these are the words that we have. Okay, group 2 has got everything in their chat. All right, room 1, can we start with you? You sounded like you were definitely ready. Go ahead, Amali, are you in room 1?
No, sorry. Room 5.
Okay.
Can I present or we are going in that logical order?
We're going to try going in order. I see. Okay, so Rubina is presenting. Okay. Rubina, do you want to share your own screen or are you going to just tell us? It's up to you. Okay, we're going to do this through chat. Okay, the meaning is a sign used to show a person is deceased. Okay, So I'm going to copy this, and here we can make our chart on this paper here. Okay. And, oh, sorry, I should put this one. I should put this in the next box here. Your word is obelisk. And I think it's a noun. Good. And the image, you have there a plus sign. I think that's not the image. And actually, I haven't seen this definition before. Do you have an example it used in a sentence? The cemetery is full of obelisks. Thank you, Nancy. And they are plus signs. Okay. Okay, thank you. Very nice. So now we have a vocab square composed of that. All right, next word is bibliosmia. Group 2, who will be presenting that?
So Mina, I will be presenting on behalf of room 2.
Okay, great.
And according to group 2, the word bibliosmia is a noun. Its meaning is the aroma or smell of old books or good books as well. And the examples we used in a sentence are, the reason why I do not use a Kindle is because it has no bibliosmia. And the second sentence we gave was, I love going to the library because of the bibliosmia. Now, if you can permit me, I'll be able to share the screen, the
yes.
images.
Oh, then I will stop. Go right ahead.
Okay. Color. So that's one image of a lady smelling.
Awesome.
Yes.
Those are perfect images to go with this. Even the cat loves it. So I especially love the cat image because it's unusual and it's a little bit funny. And so I think it sticks even more in our minds. That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Will you tell me your sentence one more time? The reason I do not use a Kindle is because of bibliosmia?
It's right from now on west.
And
I'm sorry, I had muted myself because it has no bibliosmia.
Ah, because it has no, okay. Because
yes,
it has no bibliosmia. Great, okay. And we'll just imagine in this box, there's a woman or a cat smelling a book. Very nice. All right. Excellent. Ah, okay, so that is the obelisk symbol. Thank you, Kelly. All right, next is room 3. Who will be speaking for room 3?
I'm just probe around and see if I can do anything.
Go ahead, Benedict.
Hi.
Hi.
Area.
We are in room 3.
Okay.
We were handling the word petrichor.
Ah, petrichor. Very good.
So petrichor is a noun. That's what we found out in our group. And it's a pleasant smell that frequently accompanies the first rain. A pleasant smell that frequently accompanies the first rain after a long period of warm, dry weather. A pleasant smell that accompanies the first rain after a long period of warm, dry weather.
Great.
So in a sentence, we say that the atmosphere was filled with petrichor after the heavy rain. The atmosphere was filled with petrichor after the heavy rains. Now, we were still trying to find an image that best suits that explanation, and then time was not on our side. So that is what we discussed from our side.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, I have an image in my head. When it started to rain last week, my husband and I heard it, and we went to we have a big sliding window, and we both breathed in, and we both said, oh, I can smell it. And so this is an image in my head that goes with petrichor. Great.
I wish we had it in a picture.
I know, that would be perfect. But perhaps all of you each have your own image, maybe something somewhat similar. All right, so group 4, Seth, I see your hand is up. Are you speaking for room 4?
No, I'm not speaking for group 4. I wanted to demonstrate actually the feeling of the smell of the petrichor, but just like you've done it, like you're standing at the window and it's like.
Okay, so now we all have the image of Seth doing that, and that we can have that in our heads. Great. All right, so who is in room 3? And I'm going to fix this obelisk. Okay, very good. Oh, it's kind of like a cross. Interesting. Thank you. All right. I would say Patricia if we're in the US, but I feel like maybe I should say Patricia. Either way, go ahead for room 4. We cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, so I said I'm Patricia, you are right.
Ah, okay.
So we are looking at age last, which is a noun, and it means someone who never laughs. And we gave a sentence and said that for the long time, the comedian was on stage. My brother, who is an ageless, remained silent. We did not get an image for it. And maybe we could have got one, but time ran out.
Okay. We can all imagine this grumpy brother. Maybe he's just got his arms folded.
Yeah.
Here, I'll put just a unsmiley face, someone who never laughs. Great. Thank you, room 4. And now it is time for room 5. Room 5 as penultimate. Go ahead, Amali.
Yes, for room 5, we were to find out the meaning of the word penultimate. And penultimate means, according to what our group discussed, next to last. Next to last, that is the last part. And then the part of speech, it's a noun. It's a noun. And then example that we said, the penultimate chapter of a book. That's an example that we gave. It's also interesting that I don't know if it's Geoffrey or somebody presented to us and gave us the origin of the word penultimate, where he said its origin is from Latin. It was very interesting the way he presented. Now, on example, we settled on example of 3 boxes. I drew 3 boxes whereby you have the first box, second box, and the last box. If you'll permit me, I'll just show you how I have drawn.
Yes, please
Possible?
show us.
Okay. Now, those are the images. I don't know if they are seen clearly or visible. You can see, so from the example you see from top, we have penultimate means next to last. Then part of speech, it's a noun. Example, the penultimate chapter of a book. And then we have those 3 boxes, and then the middle box is the penultimate.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so we have our 4 squares now. Let's see if I can put this back up. So that everyone can see. Maybe I can make it so we can see them all at the same time. Okay. So here's 4 examples of vocab squares. We could do it like this. If we were in a physical space, I would have had each group do it on like A4 paper. And then what I would do in class is we would put them up on the wall, and I would have students walk around and read each other's vocab squares or present to each other. But since we're online, I had you all present. You did a great job with that. Okay. So moving on. Go ahead, Amali. Or is your hand still up?
Okay. Let me lower my hand. So.
So the Zoom application makes it just come up suddenly. So it seems like it's a new instance.
Mina.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the sentence that we formed in room 1, the one about the cemetery is full of obulises.
Yes.
You omitted T.
I did. This has an error, and that will be confusing.
Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, now we have a complete one. The cemetery is full of obelisks. We have the correct image now. Good. With bibliosmia, we just imagine there's a cat there. With petrichor, we can imagine Seth smelling the rain. And penultimate, we have that image of the boxes. Or that's a nice feeling in a book when you're at the penultimate chapter. You just have, you're almost done with the book. Or actually, the reason I learned this word about a year ago because we were watching a TV series, and in the description of the episode, it said the penultimate episode. And I was like, what does that mean? And then we realized after that, there's the last episode, and we were really sad because we really liked the show. All right, so let's get back to our PowerPoint, but we are going to come back to these words because recycling is important. We can't just say the word, explain the word, and move on. Okay, so we did this. Move on. All right, so then what? So then it's time for practice. And we are not going to do a session on Bloom's taxonomy, so I thought I'd include a little bit here. I've mentioned Bloom's taxonomy before. It's kind of the levels of thinking. So in order to get up here to this kind of thinking, we need to do this lower level thinking first. We have to remember. So we have to remember our vocabulary. We have to remember what they mean. Then we need to make sure we understand the meaning. I don't know if you've ever had somebody give you a definition of a word and you can memorize the definition, but it doesn't mean that you understand the definition. Once you remember the definition and you understand the definition, now you can start to apply it and use it. And then once you're comfortable doing that, you can do this high level thinking here. So we can use this to help us think about what to do with students, what activities are appropriate. We can't just give them a bunch of words and say, okay, now do a skit. No, they're not ready for this. So first we need some practice. So we can do activities like hot seat, Pictionary, charades, board races. So we're going to do a practice here. Please answer in the chat. So I'm thinking about a word, and this word is something you would experience when the rainy season begins. Which word is it? We just studied 5 words. The word I'm thinking of, you would experience when the rainy season first begins. Ding, 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 ding. Nancy M., you are very fast. You have 1 point. Ah, Lorian, I don't know why you can't hear me. Try exiting and coming back in. All right, the next word I am thinking of. Okay, good. The next word I am thinking of is something that you might see if you had to go to a cemetery. Ding, 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 ding. Innocent, very good. Hi, Esther, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Across.
Yes, very good. And our technical word for that is obelisk. Great. Next word. This describes a person. And I am definitely not this type of person. Ding, 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 ding. Jeffrey, very good. It is an age last, and I am definitely not an age last. Maybe I laugh too much, actually, might be an issue. Go ahead, Esther. Or maybe you have your hand up from earlier still. So this would be an example of hot seat, although usually with hot seat, the students give the clues, and the student in the hot seat has to guess. We'll do one more example. We'll do this as a Pictionary. Let's see if I can do this. All right, I'm going to do a new share. What is this a picture of? See if you can guess. Nancy M., yes. I'm glad that you could figure it out from my drawing. Excellent. All right, so those are the kinds of activities that help support that basic remembering and recall of vocabulary. So next we need to do some things like be able to use it in a sentence or answer a question. And those would be some other activities. So you might have some questions like, when was the last time you experienced petrichor? Or are you an agelist, or do you know someone who is one? And that would be that would be a way for you to have students start to apply knowledge. Once they have shown that they can do that, it's time for those higher level critical thinking skills. There again. So one thing you might do is do some analysis. So for example, which words that we looked at have something in common? Do any of the words we looked at have anything in common? I can think of at least one. Or one set of words that have something in common. Go ahead, Caroline.
For bibliosmia, there's the aroma or smell, and petrichor, there's the pleasant smell that accompanies. So I'm thinking that's a similarity.
That's what I was thinking too. Those are both words that are related to a pleasant smell, unusual pleasant smells, but yes, definitely.
Yes.
Great. And Anne, Nancy, and Esther all agree with you. Very good. Maybe petrichor and obelis. I don't know. Maybe if you were at the cemetery and it was very dry, because I think of the rain hitting, I don't know why, I think of it hitting stone, but I don't think that's part of the definition. I think maybe that's just my own weird mind. Okay, so that would be something you would do for students to do some analysis. And then, of course, then we have creative things. So having them use the vocabulary to write a skit, write a story, a song, draw a comic where the characters have to use the words, something where they're using the vocabulary in a creative and meaningful way. And also, these are examples of tasks or possibly even projects, as we will talk more about when we discuss task-based and project-based learning more. If we had time, I would see if I could get you all to make some projects, but we don't have time. All right. So then, after we have taught the vocabulary, we have practiced the vocabulary, now we need to assess and see, did our students actually learn the vocabulary or not? So how we assess, again, depends on our objectives. If we were only teaching so that our students could pass a multiple choice test, well, then that's how we will assess it themselves. So for example, maybe there's some sort of state test that has a vocabulary section. And so the reason we're teaching vocab is so that students can pass that test. If that's what you're doing, then if you're assessing in the class, then that's all you need to do is multiple choice tests. But again, that's usually not what we're doing. So I myself like to do something that's a little more productive. I don't like to teach vocabulary just for memorization and just for recall. I like to make sure that my students can actually use the words. So we have these 5 words tonight. If anybody would like to either in the chat or raise their hand, if you can answer one of these 3 questions using one of the vocabulary words. So you don't need to answer all the questions, just one question. You don't need to use all the vocabulary, just one of them. And you can ignore this other vocab. This is a quiz I gave. Students had to use these words to answer these questions. But instead you have these words to answer these questions. Okay. Carol, can you make a sentence that answers that?
Okay, I was reading what is important for your happiness, and you said you used one of these Adjectives, right?
Yes, use one of the words, but I would like you to make a sentence because you are a high level learner.
With the adjectives?
With any one of those words, but I think the word you chose, bibliosmia, is a great word to answer that question if you'll just put it in a full sentence.
So I just write, bibliosmia is important for my happiness.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Great. Nicely done. Does anyone else want to give it a try? Go ahead, Josiah.
I like all kind of books because of their bibliosmia. I repeated what she said.
Excellent. And which question are you answering?
Do you like, wait a minute. Do you like the play? Okay, yes. Do you like the place you live? Yes, I like the place I live. No, wait, let me make another one. Thank you. Sorry. Let me
That's
come
okay.
up with another one after 3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes. We'll check in. Nancy, I was thinking that too. I do not like the place I live because it's strewn with obelisks. I wouldn't like that either. Good. Very nice, Anne. As a farmer, petrichor does represent my success. Yes, that means the rains have come. Very good. That was a good one. Go ahead, Purity.
I will say, I'm answering, do you like the place where you live now? I will say, I like the place where I live now because there's no one who is an ageless.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Very nice. Well done. I was thinking this is not true. Oh, I can make it true for me. My friend thinks it's important for success to be an ageless because she thinks we should always be serious, but I disagree. All right, I'm going to move on unless anybody else has some. Feel free to put them in the chat. The reason that I like having something like this as an assessment is because it requires students to show me that they can use the vocabulary for communication. But also there's a little bit of freedom with it. I think it's a terrible thing for someone to say, okay, here's a word, now use it in a sentence. It encourages students to make sentences that don't have any meaning for them just because they want to just satisfy the task. So by giving them a little bit of freedom, there's a little less stress, they're more likely to create meaningful quality sentences that will lead to better long-lasting remembering. Oh, Luceno. Soul searching is of penultimate importance to my success. So not the most important, second to last. Okay. Oh, then we wonder what the ultimate key to your success is. And then this would be an example of a final project. Actually, I used to teach a vocab class, and this was the final project every time because it was very adaptable. So students could work with a partner in the group, or they could work alone, and they had to choose one of these ways to use their vocabulary. Well, they didn't have to use all of their vocabulary, but this was the final project, and so they had to choose vocabulary from every chapter or every unit so that they were in fact recycling their vocab. And so they had many different creative ways. If they liked drawing, if they liked acting, if they liked singing, if they're more academic and preferred to write an essay, it was up to them. They could do any of these things. Usually students chose skits, comic strips, actually. Some of them were artistic, and then I also had an app that they could use. And then oddly, a lot of them actually chose writing essays, which I found boring, but it's fun. All right, so finally, we're going to look at some useful resources. So this is just a website, FluentU, and this particular article has a bunch of vocabulary games. This might be more appropriate for younger, lower level learners, but older learners like games too. American English has these great cards that you can print off. They're free and you can print them. You print them and then you fold them. And so on one side has a theme with images. So we see here the theme is weather. And so we see a bunch of images of different kinds of weather. And on the back are questions that get students to think more deeply about the vocab words and encourages them to make a meaningful connection to the vocab. And so they're on all different types of themes. They're free. They're pretty great. This is a great website I recommend for higher levels. I'm going to stop sharing this and we're going to go to this site. Okay, this site is called Youglish, and you can put in a vocabulary word that you are interested in. Maybe you understand the meaning, but you just can't quite figure out how to use it in a sentence. This often happens with higher level vocab. So we can put this a word like penultimate, and it will tell you how to pronounce it. And it will show different video clips of the word being used in videos, TV, movies. Oh, I don't think you can. Can you hear it? I think you can't. But I know how to fix it. Okay.
All of us who sing it, you know, it means right now in our world too, as we have recently been witnessing and experiencing the pain of, well, the Pulse nightclub. The penultimate piece, kind of the climax of my piece, is called All of Us. And that's a very powerful declaration.
With my colleagues and my students for some time. And I have in my penultimate slide a graphic drawn by my PhD student.
Penultimate premise is that if...
So basically, whatever word we put in there, it will show authentic examples of the word being used in media. So students tend to like it because it has video. And so it's pretty helpful. And then the last thing I wanted to share is one of my favorite vocab tools. And this is not something I would recommend for students unless you are working with university levels, but for yourself, you might find this interesting. And this is the Coca Corpus. Oh, Nancy. I've learned a new way to teach vocabulary from one of my colleagues today during the access. Oh, you went very good. I'm glad you were at that. Words. Ah, yes. The teacher writes random vocabulary on the wall or chart, and groups of learners, they choose a leader. So the teacher reads the meaning of the word, and the leader in any of the group finds the solution first, comes forward and slaps the word. Very good. They can use their hands as a tool, or they can use a stick, something like that. Yeah, so the clues that I was giving you earlier and you guys were typing the words into the chat box, we could do this as a word slap. So if I put the different words up on the wall, You guys made some teams. I gave a clue, and then the leader runs and slaps the correct word. Yes, that is one of my, it's a fun kinesthetic way to do things. Okay, back to the corpus. So the corpus is a collection of authentic texts put into a computer system, and it will show us lots of information. It is free, and you don't have to sign up, but if you don't sign up, after every 5 searches, it will try to make you sign up. It's really annoying. But if you just sign up, it's free. See, it wants me to register. Let's see if it will let me do it anyways. It will not. I actually have a login, but I have no idea what it is. See if it will just let me find it. No, it won't. Okay, I won't make you guys watch me try to log in. So what it does, if we put it in here and then we hit some of these different buttons, it will show us different examples from spoken and written media. So from newspapers, magazines, academic journals, news, radio, and will show how they're used in real life. It will also show you how frequently it's used. You can compare it to other words that are synonyms and see which one is used more commonly. If you're not sure about a collocation, you can put 2 words in together and you can see how often they are used together, if truly they are a collocation or not. And if any of you do research, this is an excellent research tool. It's actually what I used for my master's thesis, so that I could examine how the present perfect was used. And I did a lot of analysis using a corpus website. If you're ever interested, we can do a whole workshop just based on the corpus. I really love it, but it's not for everyone. It's more of a kind of linguistic type of thing, not necessarily the most practical tool for teaching. But if you are looking to do research, or you're just kind of really interested in words, it's great. All right, so that brings us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you all for being here. I will see you on Tuesday for our penultimate session of this series. We will be continuing after that, but our schedule will be a little bit different. We'll only be meeting once a week because I will be starting at the university here and will be very busy. Also, in our penultimate session, according to your vote, we will not be delving so deeply into Bloom's taxonomy, but we will be redoing task and project-based learning. Thanks, Seth. All right, any questions or issues before we wrap things up today? Hopefully you'll remember. Oh, I'll give you a quiz on Tuesday and see if what you remember about the vocab. Go ahead, Amali.
Yeah, I don't think if we tackled some challenges and some solutions, or if we tackled and I didn't get it, maybe.
For me, the challenges that I was thinking of is that there's so much to deal with in class, but you may have your own ideas about challenges. Did you want to let us know what your main challenge is with vocab?
Yeah, I was thinking about some challenges of teaching vocabularies, like, for example, we have different meanings and contextual meanings. Like, for example, if you want to teach a word, one word, for instance, in your own perspective, you think the word means A, and students have another meaning for that. So, you know, it becomes challenging for the students to get the meaning of what you intend to say.
You know, I think that's part of what's so great about teaching words in context, or the way that you were saying, if you use the definition that's in the context that you're reading, then there might be other meanings, but you can focus on the one that's in the text you're looking at. But yeah, that is an issue. There are many words with many meanings, and it can make things tricky.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much for the nice words. I hope you all have a nice weekend. And I hope you don't encounter many age lasts. Kwaheri.
Thanks, Mina.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Wait, where is Austin? Where's Austin?
He's near me. He's on the coast and he's at an access training. So he wasn't able to be here.
Oh, okay.
I think we'll see him on Tuesday.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.